We will open up the council virtual budget workshop for Wednesday, May 20th. Roll call show that all councilors but Councilor Robertson are present. And we're going to take things a little bit out of order, or on my agenda out of order. We're going to talk about hazmat first, is my understanding.
If we can, looking at hazmat, I think it's probably going to be about a 5-minute discussion, and I'd like to let Geoff get home if we could.
Okay.
So we went through the fire budget, the EMS, emergency management, all of police and animal control. The one that was missing was hazmat, and the reason it was missing is because it's not a general fund department, even though we folded into operations as if it were. By a general fund department, I mean a department that's funded through the property tax. Hazmat actually is funded through donations, and I use that word loosely. The University of Maine and Penobscot County pay into hazmat. We get a total of $46,500 from the both of them. And then aside from the budget that you have in front of you, we also, this team is actually runs under the guidance of Maine Emergency Management Agency. So MEMA allocates another $15,000 a year for hazmat operational grants, which normally don't go through the town council. Normally at some point in time when Geoff gets to the allocation, it will come to council to accept the money, and we'll do one lump acceptance of the $15,000, but that's a reimbursable. So we have to identify something that they agree to reimburse us for, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So this budget, I'm doing the numbers piece. I'll have Geoff talk about operations, but this budget actually funds about $18,000, $19,000 of expenses that would normally be sitting on the general fund. That's that $17,500 and some retirement training. So if we were to eliminate the hazmat team, it would actually add money to the general fund because we're able to allocate some of our overhead expenses to the team that would still exist even if we didn't have the team. That makes sense? The money part makes sense? Geoff, you want to just briefly talk about operations?
Yeah, just real quick, the hazmat team, make sure, okay. The hazmat team, there are only 8 teams in the entire state of Maine that are similar to our team. And the next 2 that are closest to us is the one in Madawaska, the north, and then there is one to the west of us in Waterville. And we really cover that. We provide a large catchment, rather, for the area around us. We cover all of Penobscot County. We could be called out to Washington County, down to the coast, those other places if we're deployed by the state. We also serve as backup teams to both Madawaska and Waterville. So if something happened there and they needed some assistance, likely that we would go and support them if we were requested. People don't really have an understanding of hazardous materials, especially because they don't see that much of it. There aren't very many hazardous materials responses. This last year, we did 2 or 3 calls for hazardous materials response. So far, we've made 1 response this year. The big thing about hazardous materials is it's very, very specialized. The calls are rare, but they are highly complex. They're very time consuming, and they take a lot of knowledge and training to be able to manage when there's a release of hazardous materials. And what we're talking about is things like ammonia, chlorine gas, any of the liquors, fuel products, acids, any of those types of things require special training and equipment to manage, and we're able to do that out of the Orono Fire Department here. This also, being part of this team also opens up opportunities that we wouldn't otherwise have, such as working with the civil support team through the National Guard, having agreements and working with the International Guard at the air base here in Bangor. We have opportunities for training in Alabama, New Mexico, and Texas, to name a few places. And those trainings are all government sponsored and paid for training. So whatever we send people out to learn, it's on the government's dime. So yes, it is partially our tax dollars, but most of that is eaten through government funds. They bring that knowledge back here, which just makes for a stronger, more capable fire department for the citizens of Orono. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell for operations. It is grant money. We're not asking for any huge increases. We haven't requested any huge increase from our donors. We seem to be doing fairly well on our own. And yeah, I'll kick it back to you, Sophie.
So I think, just to be clear, this is not looking at any change in the way we operate the team, and there is no change in the budget. So this is flat funded.
Sounds good to me. Anybody have any questions or comments about that?
Chief, are all of our firefighters trained to participate in hazmat?
Yes, they are, one level or another. All of them except for one right now is at the technician level. And there's additional training beyond that, which allows them to operate in environments where there are biological or chemical weapons that have been tested. So yes, that is a requirement to work here for Orono.
Good, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, hearing none, I guess we move on from the hazmat budget. Thank you, Chief Low. So I'm not sure if I have the latest version agenda, but the next item is a discussion to recognize Pride Month. And I think we're doing it a little differently than what I originally thought. So I'm gonna kick it over to Sam, I think, to just say why we're here and what is being asked of us.
I didn't know this was going to happen, but there's obviously a lot of community concern with our recognition of Pride Month and lack thereof in the past. I was reminded last week of this, and much to my chagrin, I realized, oh my God, June is next month again. And every year we talk about this sort of thing, we discuss it, but then nothing gets in the books. And so I really wanted to push this to make sure that we had voice. There's a very active and impassioned group of community residents who, and I think overall entire community for the most part, the majority, are very supportive of this, as we've seen in a lot of correspondence. And I think they're feeling a little bit unheard. So I don't know exactly what you're expecting. I know there was going to be some invitation for people to contribute their thoughts and that sort of thing. There was a lot of discussion about the possibility of having a rainbow Pride crosswalk, and a lot of back and forth on that. And I think we really need some clarification on this. I think it's especially confusing given that Bangor has one, and it feels like if they can do it, why can't we? Or how do we get that worked around? And I think we just need to shed some light on this and also talk about the things that we're trying to do as well. We've talked a lot about funding for different things and how we didn't have any money put in the budget for this and then, but in the conversation earlier today, the possibility of using funding in a discretionary fund possibly to help out with things was there. And I'll let Sophie talk to that, or you, Cindy, or whoever wants to. I do understand that flags have been purchased by very active and generous community members who wanted to see this happen on the bridge downtown, the Silk Memorial Bridge. And so I guess that's kind of an overview. So it's like, even though we may have funding to help out with that now, it's already been purchased, and we're in a little bit of a spot where we can't help, but I certainly hope there are other ways we can contribute to whatever effort we put forth to to recognize pride and show some pride in this town with in whatever ways we can do that are legal and won't, lead to serious repercussions. So Cindy, I don't know where you want to go from that. I'll be glad to jump in later as well. Also, I think a lot of people are having a hard time finding the Zoom link, which is on our agenda. But if you're not a town council groupie, you may not know where to look for that. And I don't think there are any town council groupies either, other than Tony Francis. Hi, Tony. Thanks for coming by again. And
It looks like there's 17 participants.
we got a few.
So,
we do. We have seven attendees in addition to the panelists. But I think some people are having a hard time finding that. So.
Okay. Well, I'll kick it off a little bit. My understanding was that we've got the flags that are going, or community members have purchased flags. The university has agreed to put them up on the bridge, and that as soon as we get the flags, we can coordinate with the university to get them on the bridge. There's been a lot of discussion about the sidewalk, and from everything that I've read, it's not a good idea for us to jeopardize the town qualified immunity by—
You mean crosswalk?
Crosswalk, sorry. Yeah. By trying to paint a crosswalk. I think there's some other options. Maybe we could paint, something in the parking lot if that's what somebody wants to do. I know Meghan and others have concurred that there's been businesses that would be willing to have their windows painted. So
I would love to talk about that just a little bit at some point in this discussion, in case there are community members out there who want to help, because we'll need some hands and some paintbrushes.
Well, I will turn it over to you because I guess first I am not in big favor of violating the sidewalk ordinances, unless somebody wants to take it to the federal government to get a waiver. So I would be interested in hearing other options that we can use to show Pride Week. But so I'll open it to other counselors.
Let me jump in real quick about the crosswalk thing, if I can. And indeed, I've sort of learned the process about how we go to a waiver, the different steps. And I think Sophie outlined that really well. And again, there may be some community members who want to, ask some questions and that sort of thing, because I think a lot of people get in and dig in the weeds and see what's happening there. And there's a lot of way of interpreting that. But I am all for doing whatever we can in course to push the DOT for a waiver for this. And if they deny that, then take it to the next step and write the appeal for federal. I think things may be slightly different climate, perhaps even after November, hopefully.
Never know.
You never know, fingers crossed. But also, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge the work that staff does already. I know it's easy to see a lot of the problems we have here in the town and stuff, but we have a great staff working really hard across the board, and especially our leadership with these different, the different departments that take these ideas and do incredible work to make them happen, and all staying within the boundaries of what we are, legally forced to do or mandated to do. It's just, I'm very appreciative of that. I know we all are. And I am slightly concerned that our staff, and Rob, since you're right there, I'm going to say you, I want to make sure you know, and all of you know, how much your work means to us. So that's it. I'm done being all soft and fuzzy now. Okay. But that's what I wanted to say for now about that. But I would absolutely be willing to be an eager participant of pushing for that waiver.
Anyone else want to talk about this sidewalk? Laurie?
So I just saw someone in the chat asked how Bangor does this. Bangor does not have a waiver. Bangor does a painted sidewalk or in a place that's a little more dangerous than any place that I think people have proposed in Orono, because it's not where a four-way stop. It's not a light where cars stop unless someone presses the pedestrian cross button, because it's not at a corner. It's on the bridge, and they do it. And as I said, I sent an email around that showed that the cities in the country that are doing this do not have a waiver. They're just doing this because they feel it's important for their citizens, and there's no record of any of those cities losing money or going to court over it. I did write something, so excuse me for not being able to see your faces now that I'm reading my thing that I wrote, but I'm gonna read the thing I wrote, which supports that we would just go ahead and do this, because although Sophie's email from yesterday about this mentioned the MUTCD, which are the guidelines from the Federal Highway Commission, that this goes against the guidelines. In fact, the guidelines state that crosswalks shall consist of solid white lines that mark the crosswalk. They shall be not less than 6 inches or greater than 24 inches in width. And there's actually no mention of colors in that particular guideline, that 33B18. Later on, Sophie points out that there are some letters, interpretive letters from the Federal Highway Administration from 2011 and 2013. And the 2011, which is the one she cites about how we might be liable for some, if there's something related to non-compliance, if someone were to get hurt in the crosswalk, and that because it's a safety hazard. And in fact, the only science done on that to produce that letter was that someone did a study to find out if there were fewer fatalities and if there were more accidents. Their question was whether there were fewer fatalities. They assumed that it was a safety, that it improved safety because there was evidence that cars slowed down as they approached colorful crosswalks. And they did a study, and the hypothesis was, because they already knew that cars slowed down, that there would be fewer fatalities in rainbow crosswalks than crosswalks that were not painted colorfully. And there was no data to support that. So although cars do slow down, there's no data to support that they are actually making things safer by being painted. But there's nothing in that science that said that they make it more dangerous when you have a rainbow crosswalk, which is how it seemed to have been interpreted, that by putting a rainbow crosswalk, we're creating a danger or a hazard. And there's no data to support that. As a scientist, that was pretty important to me to identify that. And the cities that have gone ahead and done this have not had any that has been reported to me or that I could find in any research. So I want to thank the group of Orono citizens who suggested that Orono demonstrates our support for the LGBTQ+ community members by installing rainbow art on the Brandon Silk Memorial Bridge and painting a rainbow on an Orono crosswalk for Pride Month. Visual representations of support for LGBTQ lives are important. They make a positive impact by countering a bit of the stress and anxiety induced by daily experience in a homophobic world. Walking in a pride parade or standing on the sidewalk and watching a pride parade are both healing and empowering for LGBTQ+ people, especially LGBTQ+ teens who are experiencing rejection of their self-identity and are feeling hopeless. Each year, I've seen many Orono teens participating in the Bangor Pride activities. I've been in the past couple years on the Pride Planning Committee, and so I'm there through all of the activities. Walking across Bangor's Rainbow Crosswalk has become a ritual for many, including Orono LGBTQ+ teens. The ritual includes laughing and giggling and taking pictures of each other crossing the street. It's a moment of joy in lives that also must experience homophobia every day. Like marching in a parade, walking across a rainbow crosswalk allows individuals to experience support for their otherness while moving through space. Walking across a rainbow crosswalk is like being part of a communal prayer for a more just world, like experiencing a blessing from those who have the power to show support or to do nothing. The joy on the faces of the Orono teens who participated in Pride last year reminded me of how important it is for all of us to support the marginalized members of our community. Bangor's Pride Parade and Rainbow Crosswalk are examples of how that municipality creates safe spaces that support and celebrate. Because of COVID-19, there is no parade in Bangor this year, but Bangor will be repainting rainbow colors on the one particular crosswalk because that city has made a commitment to its LGBTQ community members. Bangor's Rainbow Crosswalk is both a symbol of joy and a memorial. It is painted each year on the street that crosses over the bridge where several teens threw Charlie Howard to his death in 1984. The teens who harassed Charlie Howard and ended his life were participating in a different kind of ritual. To use the vernacular of the time, it was a gay bashing. The statewide outrage over the killing of Charlie Howard sparked the formation of Maine's first LGBTQ+ rights organization, now called Equality Maine. The killing of Charlie Howard is part of our region's history, and the homophobia that fueled the hate crime that ended his life hasn't gone away. Bangor's Rainbow Crosswalk is on a state road, Route 2. It is not on a corner controlled by traffic lights. It is in the middle of a block, and it is colorful, and it is a blessing. It is an important symbol, a message from the city of Bangor to the LGBTQ+ community, and it is a symbol visible to the LGBTQ+ people far beyond the boundaries of our state. The Human Rights Campaign, an LGBTQ+ civil rights organization, evaluates municipalities on how well they support LGBTQ+ community members. Of the 9 Maine towns and cities rated by HRC's Municipal Equality Index, last year, Orono's rating was the lowest, 30 out of 100. Bangor's was 15 points higher. The rubric for the MEI is designed to evaluate large cities, so attaining an excellence score like the 45 earned by Portland isn't possible in towns too small to have programs dedicated to supporting LGBTQ+ community members. However, painting a rainbow crosswalk would enable Orono to earn points in the leadership for LGBTQ+ equality category. As many as 13 points are awarded for this category, and that it is clear to many, including the HRC, that painting a crosswalk with rainbow colors is a sign of leadership for LGBTQ equity. So there's my wrap. As a scientist and as a member of the LGBT community who has worked to try to make Pride events better, who has experienced homophobia in workplaces and in my home, I can tell you that these things make a big difference. And because I can find no record, and I haven't seen from Sophie any record that we would be liable, we would actually lose money by doing this from our federal highway money, that we would be censured in any way, since Bangor has been doing it regularly and they have not received any of those censures. I strongly support that we would take a stand and paint a crosswalk, not across Route 2, because then it would be, actually, we would then, if we painted one that wasn't on Route 2, but say at the top of Mill Street, we would not be painting across a state highway. So there's my proposal.
One of the things I just want to add, and as part of my legal career from 1984 on, I have represented all sorts of individuals, helped make partnerships for lesbian couples when there wasn't marriage equality, representing individuals through the courts. I just have a problem violating the law for this representation. I think that there's other options we can do that will have the same meaning.
These are advisory letters, not laws. And
I guess the MMA, to me, that I'll let Sophie speak to it, but my interpretation of the MMA and the MDOT was that we will lose our immunities if we paint a sidewalk. For me, so Sophie, you can speak to it if you want.
So I want to just be clear from the get-go that staff has no opinion about how council recognizes LGBTQ+. That is government speech. It's council's job to decide how it wants to represent the town. However, Laurie, I don't know where you're getting your information, because we have had conversations with Bangor Public Works, and I had a conversation a year ago with the Bangor city manager. MDOT issued the city of Bangor permission to do that sidewalk. And according to the city manager, it was very unlikely that that would ever happen again. So, you know, I don't know where you're getting your information. According to Public Works.
From the mayor of Bangor.
So
when I said, are you painting a crosswalk this year? And she said, yes.
So you think that the mayor of Bangor has more information than the Public Works director, the city manager, and MMA legal about how things are done?
You asked me how I got my information, and I told you how I got my information. That's who I know. You talk to who you know. I know that every year the Bangor Pride has a crosswalk painting commemoration event as part of Bangor Pride.
So,
And so since Pride isn't happening this year, I didn't know if it would happen this year. So I texted her and said, is there going to be a painting of the crosswalk, even though there aren't Pride events?
so there can be a painting of the crosswalk because MDOT gave a special exemption because of the fatality that happened in that location due to a hate crime. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, without an exemption, if we mark the road in a way that is not standard, it can be classified as a highway defect. If anybody gets injured as the result of a highway defect, we lose our immunity and all of the caps that we enjoy under the Maine Tort Claims Act. I will tell you that I'm not here to tell council what it wants to do or not wants to do, but in my evaluation, in my contract, in my oath of office that I took here, it is very clear that the town council expects me to tell the town government how it can operate within the confines of the law. The standard of the Federal Highway Administration is written down in the MUTCD. In that guidance, it says exactly what a sidewalk is supposed to look like. Further, in all the research that I've done over the last week, the one area that they said you could have something in subtle shades, and then the colors that they listed were all earth tones in between the white lines, but you were not supposed to have any kind of noticeable pattern or jarring color. I would think if you're going to put a crosswalk on the face of the earth and you wanted to put a rainbow on there, you'd want it to be visible. Under the MUTCD, you cannot do that. So I will tell you, I am baffled. I am totally baffled that of all of the things that we could do in this community to celebrate Pride Month, which I think there are plenty, that we keep coming back to taking an existing pedestrian safety infrastructure and that currently meets the standard and turning it into something else that doesn't meet basic safety standards. So when I look at that, Laurie, I say, as a staff, we have devoted nights and lots of other time to pedestrian safety. We did the Heads Up campaign. We've gotten, Councilor Perry wants to make sure we get the crosswalks painted in a timely fashion every year because they're very, very important. I don't know why we need to take a piece of infrastructure that is currently operational and meeting standard and turn it into something that doesn't. There is a mechanism to go through if we want to try to apply for the waiver that would allow this to happen legally. I don't understand why you would take this risk. That's just me.
I'm supporting a group of citizens and Sam who mentioned that it would be wonderful to have a rainbow crosswalk. You and Cindy have both used the word sidewalk, which I think is a brilliant workaround, because I was supporting their suggestion, which has been done in cities all over the world to great fanfare and joy. And as I mentioned, even I got emails from people, and I assume you guys got them too, with pictures of the kids from the MDI high school LGBTQ club walking on the Bangor Rainbow Crosswalk last year. I mean, it's a thing. It's a joyous thing that students participate in, and I would love students from elsewhere and our own students to be able to participate in that. Whether it crosses Route 2 or is actually even on a road is not as important to me. I'm supporting what these constituents said, and I think it's a great idea. And I'm always impressed with you and your staff and your ability to get to a yes on things that you see as have been brought to your attention as something that the town wants to move forward with. So you ended up, they gave a proposal of something on the bridge. You found it not workable, but you came up with something else to do on the bridge that brought it to yes. And I completely salute that. And the townspeople bought those flags already, and that was within a week, that turnaround from idea to actual, so that we know we're going to do it.
Lori,
And so paint across some piece of ground where people can walk is something that I assume that we would be able to do, whether or not we make a crosswalk. And I don't know if Bangor has gotten that waiver. The impression I got from the text was that this is the only one they do, and they try to make it on the quiet. So it could be that they have approval, or I don't know if, I don't know what all the stipulations are of how they have it. I know they do have it in Bangor, but we have a parking lot that is ours. We have sidewalks that I don't think.
there are many options. Can other people get in here I think other people may have some things to say. I don't mean to cut you short, but you're going pretty strong there, and I got to leave in a half hour. So I agree. You brought me into it. I absolutely support this. I love the idea of a crosswalk, but I want to make sure it's legal, okay? I don't want to put the town in jeopardy, okay? And I know everyone's interpreting different things about what that means, but given the information we're getting, and I've read through a lot of the stuff that Sophie provided, and it I don't think it's just like, oh, let's just take a shot. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I think it does matter. I think we have responsibility. And so that's why I also push, if we're going to continue with this push for a crosswalk, which I think we should, let's do it by making that appeal, by getting shut down from the DOT and then taking to the federal and like trying to get that waiver. Let's bring in Angus King. Let's see if Susan Collins will want to get behind this, whatever. I mean, but it's like, we need to do that. And so I don't have anything really prepared. I mean, I'm not really, I didn't prepare a speech, but it's like, I do think this is really important. And Laurie, I appreciate your dedication and your enthusiasm for this, but it's like, I just want to make it really clear that because of those statements, the rest of us are not anti-LGBTQ by no means. And sometimes it comes across that way when we get an impassioned speech like that, and that's not true and it's not accurate. And that that disturbs me, Laurie, when that's painted. I just want to put that out there right now, because we are not anti-LGBTQ plus, and I think you know that. And I just want to make sure it's clear for everybody. So I just wanted to say, I think there are many other great things. I love the bridge. I love the possibility of maybe doing something on the Rotary. I love what Meg's doing with contact and actually doing things to get people painting on the windows, not just writing about it, but doing things to get things in the business windows. That's fantastic. I'm all for this. And if we can move forward with a plan on how to move this forward so we can explore this for future, that would be great. That would be something productive. That would be a very strong step in the right direction. I would be willing to be part of that, absolutely. And
Sam, if I could make a suggestion that maybe we let a couple other counselors talk,
sure.
And then maybe what we could do after the budget, because I won't speak for other counselors, but if we're going towards trying to get an exemption, then maybe at a community development meeting, we could put together a committee that could go for this exemption. But why don't I let other counselors speak at this point?
Yeah, and I would like to echo a lot of Sam's comments. I right now, this seems like we keep finding ourselves in the same position where it's May, suddenly we're hearing that people are interested in doing certain things for June, and it's right around the corner, and we're in the middle of budget season. And as Sam, when he brought the crosswalk back up the other week, he said, mea culpa, I was supposed to set an alarm and talk about this earlier. But what we've ended up doing is now it feels like there's all this pressure to get it done. And the level of sort of feeling, and sometimes negative feeling about, well, why can't we just do it, seems to be ratcheting up because there's this pressure of a deadline. I agree with Sam that it is definitely worth exploring. And just because we're busy with the budget does not mean that anything that has to do with supporting the LGBTQ plus community is somehow secondary or should be put aside just because we're supposed to be doing the budget now. It's something that we should make a priority just as much as we make all these other things a priority. But to do it this year is to break the law when we could do it the right way, in a way that would protect the town. And as town councilors, our first primary responsibility is to protect the town's interests. And so if just doing it because we can and see what happens this year puts us in legal jeopardy, or even the specter of legal or financial jeopardy, that is irresponsible for us to do as a council. However, it is not necessarily that we should just shove it off to another year. And I propose that, kind of like what Cindy was suggesting, that as soon as the budget season's over, that we have a workshop or a community development meeting where we invite these particular folks who came forward with the proposal this year into that meeting to talk about a strategic plan of what exactly can the town do to prepare for and be ready for next year, and also perhaps make a permanent yearly gesture of celebration during Pride Month. I mean, we're lucky that we have the OBC Pride Run every year, but that's a private business doing that. There's no reason why the town can't have a yearly celebration of some kind, but it takes planning, and we should do it the right way and the legal way. So I think that this year we should convene a meeting with, workshop with community members to do that and to plan it right. And I agree, Laurie, with some of Sam's comments about the tone that this conversation is taking. And it's very troubling to me that the crosswalk, some of the rhetoric around the crosswalk, some of it coming from you, Laurie, has turned it into a zero-sum game where if the town doesn't go do this right now, the town staff and the rest of council are not supportive of that community. And that hurts me. I mean, I take that very personally.
I prepared comments to make clear that I didn't have any accusations. My comments were supporting the teens, supporting this as a ritual and a blessing, and thanking the people who proposed it. So I'm disappointed that in some way you think me speaking in support of LGBTQ visualization is a condemnation of my fellow counselors. That was never my intent.
If I could finish, it's not just what you said now. It is the emails that have been sent out. It is the things that you've said and emailed and spread around other community members. There is a feeling that this has become like a litmus test. Right now, today, a litmus test for whether the town of Orono and its council and its town staff care about these issues. And I don't think that helps anyone. The whole purpose of doing this is not anything more than showing a commitment and support of this particular community, and that this is a welcoming place, and that Orono can be a safe place where people are included and supported. And if possible, we could even use this to help this community in a tangible way, the LGBT plus community, which I'll be happy to talk about if people want to hear about the windows later on. But the purpose of this proposal that the group brought forward was about a big visible demonstration of support. And there are other ways this year that we can accomplish that goal without putting the town at risk. And we can certainly plan for the future. And I am supportive of that, just like Sam is. But it is not a zero-sum game where if we don't decide to paint the crosswalk this year, we suddenly are a town that doesn't support the LGBT plus community.
No, and I think we will have a lot of visual, things on the bridge and in the rotary and in the windows. I don't know if Terry or Tom want to say anything. If not, I think Rob Yerxa might have a few options, but Terry or Tom?
I do.
Go ahead.
Well, you go first, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with what I've heard from Cindy, that there are other ways of demonstrating our commitment to Pride Month. I am opposed to painting a crosswalk rather, without going through proper channels and doing it the right way. But I am very supportive of showing that the town demonstrates its support for Pride Month.
So my thing is this. So the reason why I had to pause because it brings up a lot of things from my past. And I'm going to try to be, if I'm all over the place, you guys, please bear with me. I'm the product of gay bashing. I grew up in an era where gay men were the primary target for who we were. I also had a couple older friends that were in Stonewall as drag queens that fought against this. What I do not like, and please correct me if it's wrong, I feel on some level this whole thing has become politicized, which really disappoints me because I've worked every bit in my life about being around people, not just because I want them to accept me. I want to live in a community that everybody's accepted. And this is probably the only community I've ever lived in where I felt like this place really cares. My neighbors are all amazing. I've never had that. I lived in Fort Fairfield, Maine, as an individual where I had neighbors putting drag queens in toilets, like mannequins, and painting stuff on our house. When I heard the first thing was, I'll just want to let this be known in support of our town council and especially our administration, it felt like the first emails that were coming out were insinuating that our town did not appreciate the LGBTQ community. As a gay male, I have never once actually ever felt that, and I think that's completely wrong. Human rights campaign, unless you got a person who you can pay to make sure that you check all the boxes off, there is no way that you can actually attain that. So by saying 30% is what our score was, I don't care. I really don't, because I can look at Orono and say, Orono's at least a 90. Everything that we do here is all inclusive, and we want to make sure that everybody's there to be part of that. I mean, I had a couple letters that people wrote. Some of them, there were a couple in here who said, like, I was asked to write something. So then I questioned, well, were you writing it because this is something that you felt deeply about? Now I'm bouncing all over the place with this, but I just want to say that I don't want people to think that we are not ones to do this. And please be clear, do not use this as an opportunity to politicize something for whatever. If you're doing a campaign for something, this is not the venue, because this is something we all work very hard to be a community with, and I appreciate, and I'll be with any person around. And I've often tell people the rainbow flag, yes, the gay community, we have always used that, but I never looked at it that way. I look at the rainbow flag as a reflection of everybody. We are many different colors, many different backgrounds in our community, and that's why I love Orono. I can see that flag everywhere, and I don't specifically see it for me. I see it for everybody. So I'm done, and I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Rob, do you have a few options for us to move forward on this?
Well, I guess specifically to the crosswalk issue, there is a path forward with that. I think if council chose to support that effort and was willing to write a letter of support, I could make a formal request to the DOT to allow a specific situation. So, I can work with community members to decide exactly where the crosswalk which crosswalk it would be, and what the design would look like, and then submit a formal request to the DOT for that. That, in talking to my colleagues at the City of Bangor, that is back in 2016, I believe, how that process went for them. Once you have the waiver, you can repaint it every year or however often as you'd like. So they don't get a waiver every single year. They've already got the original waiver to allow that one crosswalk. If the waiver was approved at the state level, then that becomes an easy prospect for us to complete, because now we don't have the conflict between what the standards say and what we can and cannot do. So to me, the process would be to decide as a group whether that's something you want to support, to the point where you'd be willing to put together an application to the DOT to approve that request and then move forward from there. And that can happen. That doesn't have to happen tomorrow afternoon either. I mean, I think obviously it's a process. It's going to take some time, but if like Councilor Gardner was talking about, if that needs to be a more inclusive, extensive process where we get input from all the community members at a later date, and ultimately we get the waiver in September and we do it then, that's totally feasible. But I think that in the end is the right way to approach the crosswalk process.
Rob, that sounds like a great idea. And maybe what we could do is put an order on the June 15th meeting to ask staff to move forward or approve the application for a crosswalk exemption. And I apologize for mixing it up with sidewalk all afternoon. If that's something that would be agreeable to council, maybe we can put that on the 15th, and then we can also discuss bringing in community members, and we can get maybe Sophie could talk to a couple of community members about forming a committee on this.
And I love that, obviously very supportive of that idea. I do also want to make sure that when we are bringing community members, that we're also actively seeking community members who are part of the LGBTQ+ community or plugged into those networks and support systems in the area through the university or Bangor. I want to make sure that that everyone's at the table who should be at the table.
I agree with you, and I don't know about the rest of you. I just haven't had a chance to kind of process what that committee would look like, how big it needs to be, or that kind of stuff. So maybe by the 15th, we'd have a plan for that. So, Laurie?
So I want to thank thank the people who brought this to our attention this year, and thank Sam for being the leader on this. And I feel a bit as I have to defend myself about the statement that this is becoming political. I didn't bring this up, and everything we do is political because what we do is talk about town policy. So those words are related because that's what we do. We do policy, and we try to be leaders. And in my role in trying to be a leader is to hear what people want and to bring that forward. So I didn't encourage Cammie and her team of parents and community members to write the letter, but I certainly applaud them for writing it. I did mention 2 years in a row that I would love to see us participate beyond the OBC's great participation in Pride by having a fun run. That I'd like to see Orono participate more. Maybe our town, the town councilors could walk in the parade, or we could have a float or whatever. And that didn't fly. This year I am running for office to represent Orono in the state legislature. And I actually did not bring it up this year because my issues are about supporting Orono. And I have things that I want to talk about.
Laurie, I don't think, I'm going to have to stop you. I don't think we can be campaigning on.
I don't mean to campaign, but basically it was implied that I brought this up because I was running for some other office. And I'm saying that I made an impassioned statement because I've had experiences and know how valuable this is. And I wanted to make sure that you guys heard that. And Terry, I am so sad to hear your lived experience of gay bashing and neighbors treating you poorly. And I'm so glad that here in Orono, you found a place where you and your husband are safe and comfortable. And I myself, that's why I live here. This is a place that I feel safe and comfortable to raise my family. But visual representations help people who aren't sure if that's the case to know that this is a place that will support them. So thank you all for discussing this. I'm really glad we got in depth about it this year. It's again the third year that it's come up. And Sam, we are all involved in so many things. We don't always get things in a timely manner. And so I think you were great to bring it up, even though it was May. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sam, I'll go to you, and then I was going to ask Meg to talk about the windows.
Awesome, great. I need to go soon, so I'm sorry, but thank you, Laurie. I appreciate that. I just wanted to clarify that I want to make sure that everybody knows that we are all in support of this. I did want to talk briefly, if Sophie can talk about the possibility, we're working on a proclamation, what'll come out on June 15th, if we could talk about that. Recognizing June is Pride Month by the town of Orono for consideration. And also if there was any possibility of funding from that reserve that we could apply towards, since the flags are purchased now. And again, great work by the community, that's amazing. But it's like, is there a way that we can use some of that funding to support other initiatives that we're doing to help support this, either defray the cost of art supplies or whatever Maggie is going to talk about in a little bit. But again, I have to go in just a couple minutes. I'm sorry for that, but it was it's just the way it is tonight. Thank you.
So, Sam, just to follow on with that, I think, one of the things I respond to is this desire to have something consistent. I think it makes it easier to work it into an operational work plan if it's scheduled and known. If the community is willing to hand over their hard-fought flags, I would be happy to store them in a secure place and take the commitment on to make arrangements with the university to try to get them up each year after Memorial Day, but in observance of Pride Month. I also think, much like Arbor Day, because we're Tree City, USA, and trees are important to many folks, for Arbor Day every year, we make sure that the town council does a proclamation. So I think an annual proclamation is not a bad thing. And again, once you have it and you do it every year, it becomes easier. Sam sent me the proclamation from the city of Bangor. I think it's a great place to start from, but I would want to kind of make it more unique to Orono. I'm not sure how. I think my goal is to have a good draft this year that people can then tweak in coming years to make it outstanding. But the thought would be that we would put that on the agenda for the June 15th meeting for counselors to discuss and make a formal vote on. So,
Meg, do you want to talk about the windows? No.
do you want to talk about the funding piece? All right, well, I'll do that after Meg.
Okay. Yes, I'm very glad to see that we could perhaps get some yearly, like, routine ways of celebrating and recognizing Pride Month. I mean, we can sit here and say, well, I brought this up or I brought that up. We've all dropped the ball. Let's be honest. Year after year, all of us, every single solitary one of us that I'm looking at on my screen now, we've dropped the ball, council, right? Because around this time of year, we talk about it and then we kind of go, budget, we don't know, it's too much, there's lots of stuff going on. And then budget's over and summer and it gets away from us. And every single one of us has not followed through on this initiative. And we can't make up for that in any other way other than to move forward and try to do better, right? So now we're gonna do better with some yearly initiatives. But the thing that I'm trying to help out with here, with the folks who brought this proposal forward in the first place, we've kind of formed a little subcommittee, and what we're working on right now is a proposal. It's going to be a comprehensive proposal that will go out to all of the local business owners on the Main Street and Mill Street high visibility corridor, where we will offer to paint their windows for Pride Month. And if they don't have good window space, we also have been talking with some folks about some public art, some kind of sculptural stuff. I hope I'm not putting her on the spot, but I believe Katie Quirk has agreed. If you all saw that Washington Post article that she wrote, awesome. I think she's agreed to make a sculpture in honor of Pride Month. So that will be great. So if there are businesses that don't have a great window area, we have other options. So basically what I took away from the proposal that people brought to council was that it was important to the community to have a big, visible, tangible demonstration of support. and being able to kind of deck out most of our corridor of Main Street and Mill Street is all privately owned property, right? So the town can't really do a lot about that. But the local business community is super supportive. So I think that, you know, if we can pull people together and really decorate the heck out of downtown and make it look really special, that's awesome. But that's not the only thing. So it's not just that I want potentially folks out there who might be willing to help donate their time or their efforts. I'm also kind of putting a note out there and a plea that, as one of our commenters pointed out in the comment thread, too often businesses and other organizations use Pride Month as sort of a marketing gimmick, right? So it's important, I think, also to figure out a tangible way that we can support these communities when we're doing sort of a visual support as well. So my hope is if we can really deck out downtown, we can then get a little, maybe generate a little interest around that and be able to direct people towards monetary support of an organization that supports LGBTQ+ causes. And so I'm talking with some community members about how to best do that now. But my hope is that if we make a big splash downtown, it'll bring joy to people in town, and it will show people who pass through this town or live in this town that it's a supportive, inclusive place. And also, let's actually use it to tangibly support people in the LGBTQ+ community. So if anybody is interested, you can just email me and I'll hook you in to see if we can get a way for you to volunteer or, but yeah, that's what I've got.
Thank you. And Sophie, before you talk about money, I just want everybody to know that the participants that are listening in, council is seeing all of your chat and all of your statements, and we appreciate them, and we are reading them and incorporating them into the archive of this recording, and also we're taking the information and using it to create something great. So Sophie can talk about money.
So first, I just want to double check. I'm not sure that the chat is going to make its way to the archive. Belle, do you have a different answer on that?
So the chat itself doesn't show up on the video streaming. We have two choices. We generally can, I can see if the chat thread gets recorded to the cloud, and then we can download a text file of it, or at the conclusion of the meeting, I would be happy to read it into the record if you'd like to have a record of all of the comments that were made in this workshop.
Well, will Nancy be making some sort of minutes to this? So could we just attach the text to the minutes?
Unfortunately, I don't always get a the chat thread. I'm not sure why that happens to be. I know that in regular meetings, I get that as a third download, but with the webinars, I haven't had that chat thread as a download. So I'm not sure if it's just because it's a webinar or if there's another option to activate. But the past few webinars, I haven't had a chat thread as a download option.
I just highlighted and copied it all and emailed what's been posted so far, Belle. So it's sitting in your email right now.
Thank you very much, Sam. That was a very technical way of fixing the problem. Sophie, you want to go?
Sure. So talking with Councillor Kunz earlier today, we had a lovely chat about money, which is my favorite topic these days. And the issue that came up is when people asked if I had money in my budget, in the budget that I'm authorized to expend, we have what equates to a spending freeze here. If we don't absolutely need it, we're not buying it right now. And the reason for that is because the current economic climate has created a sudden and severe decline in revenues. So when people ask if I have money, the answer is always these days, no. But the town council does have a special projects reserve. And if there are things that we could do that council wants to do, we've got $4,607 in that reserve. So if you wanted to spend a couple $100 supporting this initiative, you, I mean, absolutely could do that. It just takes your vote to do that. My thought would be that if we could, if you wanted to move forward with that, you'd identify what it would be used for. And then also I would suggest that we put language in there that would say if there's money left over in the budget that is not used to offset the revenue deficit, that you would replenish your reserve, which we could absolutely do. And it all depends just how the budget year comes in, and you could even extend it to next year if you wanted to. So there is a little bit out there.
Would that be something that would make more sense to vote on June 15th at the meeting and maybe have a better idea of what we're talking about for funds?
I think, so you can only do it with a vote, and you can't vote in workshop. So I think that would be important. Anytime you take money out of a reserve, you usually say what you're going to use it for. So I think you'd have to have an idea of what you are authorizing me to expend the money on. Is it to buy paint for downtown businesses, much like we do for Light Up the Night? We, although we don't do, staff doesn't go do the painting, and it's business owners that do it individually with high school and middle school kids, I think, doing a lot of the artwork. The town usually buys all the paint.
By the way,
for
it
that.
seems like some of those entities might be volunteering to help with this as well. So,
yeah. So, I mean, I think that can be pricey. And so that might be something that would make sense for us to expend some funds on. Just, you know, a thought. The other piece that hasn't been talked about, and I don't know if the group is, community members are planning to come forward, but we had offered up, Rob and I had looked at where we did have control along the Route 2 Park Street corridor. And we do have control of the interior of the roundabout. So we had offered up the ability to maybe put some artwork there and along the curb. There's like 2,100 square feet of grass and another 210 feet of curb that we can put paint on. What's really important though is while we oftentimes in this community have incredible artists that just kind of, art just kind of pops up. And as a town, we look at that, and if it's not causing a hardship, even if, you know, isn't causing a problem, as long as we don't see a safety issue with it, we usually just leave it be. It's a lot different when a community does it as opposed to when the town does it, if that makes any sense to you. But when the community, if the community is going to do something with paint, because of our MS4 permit, our federal MS4 permit, we need to make sure we know what's going down on the ground. We need to make sure that what's going down is going to be compliant with the MS4 permit. And quite honestly, I think we'd be looking for some more temporary nature unless it was something that council was all right with being a permanent display. If that makes, am I making sense? Okay.
Sam?
So is this moving, can I make a proposal that this goes to our June 15th meeting to consider spending up to, let's say, $500 towards this for consideration? Is that too specific?
You can make that proposal, and it would, maybe by then we'd have a better idea of what the money would be used for.
Exactly, to be determined, but not just to be put there, but to absolutely be identified as to what that will go for. And it sounds like with some of the things that we could do and hopefully will do, that would be a small drop in the bucket actually. But
the only thing that I would have a question about is if, so obviously, you know, painting all these windows and stuff, it does take time, and it's going to take more time. I mean, some businesses are starting to reopen. We have to maintain social distancing. There are logistical issues. So if the idea was to use the money to pay for example, paint for the windows or something, by June 15th, I think people would already want to have been doing that. So just logistically, how does that work?
It probably would be more of a reimbursement than an initial outlay because we can't take a vote. We're not in a special meeting, so it's just a workshop.
It can be a reimbursement. It doesn't have to be a direct purchase of supplies.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
But let's not spend too much money because we don't know.
Right.
I mean, if people go out and spend $3,000, then we may not have that to reimburse. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess I would check with Sophie before spending more than $50 at this point, but just to make sure that we can cover it.
And we've already gathered some information from the folks who facilitate the window painting for Light Up the Night. They've told us what kits they use, and I think they're going to perhaps be involved in the process as well. So I would expect it to be somewhere in that ballpark, although I don't know monetarily what that ballpark is, but we have the information, and I think that those people are working with us to help facilitate this.
just one last thing before I go. I just want to thank everybody again for putting the time in this. I know we're all on the same page with this, but especially the work that Sophie and Rob have put into this, and the incredible support of the community members who really pushed this to come forward. And I do want to apologize for not getting this out earlier. And I don't just mean this year, I mean the past 6 years. So that's it. I'm done. I got to go. Thanks.
Thanks.
If I could, Cammie Carter has asked if we would be willing to store the sculptures with the flags for future use. My sense is that probably. I think we would need to understand the size of sculptures, because some of of Katie's sculptures are quite large, and I don't know that I have space for those. But I think in general, we would make every effort to try to find space for something like that, if it means, because, it's important.
Anyone else have any last statements on this? All right. I believe that the WPCF grant acceptance is just moving on to June 15th. But I think you had something for you and Dave.
Yeah, I asked Dave to join us because when we had our council meeting, I think it was council, about the loan program, and I took lots of notes, and I had a clear vision in my head of exactly what you meant by an Orono business that wasn't really an Orono business. And then as Dave and I sat down to try to write the guidelines together, we cannot make this. We can't draw the thread through the eye of the needle, and we need some help. And I think I'd let Dave, do you want to kind of take a stab at what your thoughts are with this?
I think that I think the guidance that I was looking for anyway is that I was hearing from council members more limitations on or how they envision the limitations of particular loans. I don't know what a small business is versus a large business. When it talks about a company being based in Orono, we have lots of companies that are here, and it's a large part of their business, but they may not be based here and I don't want to get into specific businesses, but when Sophie and I were talking about it, I gave many examples of businesses that I knew that would probably take advantage of a loan like this that could really help their Orono location, but their home base may not be in Orono. So what I was trying to achieve is the goal that you were, the spirit of what the council was trying to achieve, while making it so that it wasn't so difficult that, quite frankly, nobody was actually going to even apply for it anyway. And so what I would ask is a clarification on if a business applied for a loan that had a operation in Orono, that they would have to be able to demonstrate that the funds were being used at their Orono location, that it wasn't Burger King. I heard that was being used before, is that if Burger King was applying for the loan, does Burger King really need the loan? Well, the Orono location might or might not. And again, it was just an example that the council had used. So what I wanted to be able to do was, they're obviously not based here, but if they applied for it, that they would have to demonstrate that they were actually using those funds at their Orono location and not exporting those funds back to some place out of Orono. Does that help us? Back to the studio, Sophie.
So most of the time when we have meetings and I say, yes, I hear what you're saying and I go forth and I put that into action, I feel very confident that I'm channeling counsel. I just want to make sure that I would actually be channeling counsel if we followed where Dave is headed, which is not putting a lot of limitations, but knowing that they have to have been sustainable. They have to be doing business in Orono. So some of the names on that personal property list they're not really doing business here. They're just renting something here or leasing something here. So that wouldn't work. And they need to show that they've been negatively impacted and that they're going to be using their funds here in Orono. Is that adequate for folks?
I mean, for me, it's like this, the spirit of this loan is, this is just a bridge loan to get a local business owner who is solvent or was solvent, but is trying to make it to that next checkpoint where they can get their money. But there's a delay at the state or federal level, that this is just a bridge loan to get them there. If it, otherwise they could have serious damage done to their business. I don't want perhaps a multi-million-dollar company that's headquartered in New York that's going to be operating their facility whether they get a loan or no loan because they're fine. I don't want them to receive any of this loan because there's only so much of it to go around. I want it to help those businesses that would otherwise perhaps really struggle while they're waiting for those federal dollars to come in because there's such a delay. So I don't know if that is helpful, but that's what I think about it.
If I could respond to that, not only do I agree with you, Megan, but I just was watching a video online yesterday that on a national basis, the one thing that is hurting all businesses right now is cash flow. And it's not that the profit and loss statement isn't going to look good maybe at the end of the year, but they could frankly fail simply because they don't have the ability to have that money that's coming in and out this summer. And because they're going to be starting up within the next 30 days, they're going to have more need for access to those funds on a short-term basis. So I totally agree with you. Thank you.
Sophie? What Dave described wasn't exactly what I had in mind when we talked about it the last time. However, I think what he described makes sense, and I would support that.
Did you hear that, Sophie? I made sense.
You know what? A clock is correct twice a day.
Exactly. That's once in a row.
So if people I see nodding of heads, if we're on the right track, then I'm going to go forward and work with Dave to get the eligibility paperwork done so that we can kick this off, if that works.
Yeah,
Good.
I think somehow working on showing that it's going to be used in Orono would satisfy my
Yep.
my issues. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this?
No, that actually makes sense the way that Dave had presented it, in the sense of, like, if you look at Burger King, great example of cash flow is that there was the individual who owned both of the Burger Kings up. I think one was in Caribou and one Presque Isle, and because of cash flow, they shut them both down. They're not even open anymore. So somebody could have one in Bangor. They also own that one in Orono, and so it really, technically, even though it's a name brand, it's a small independent business for somebody. And yeah, as long as it's in Orono, I'm okay with it also.
All right. It sounds like we have a plan then. I like
Thank
it.
you, folks.
Good.
So the last thing I have is a brief town manager update.
Sure. Couple of things. I wanted to first let you know that I am going to be asking Dave to turn the pressure up a little bit with our legislators and DECD and the governor's office to try to get the ability for our restaurant facilities to offer outdoor dining experiences. It just doesn't sit well that I was up in Piscataquis County this past weekend. You can go into restaurants and sit down there. And I get that we are in a community spread location in Penobscot County, but I think there are really ways that we could fairly easily work with the business community to facilitate some outdoor dining. And if we did that, it would be my intention, if it's all right with council, to bend our rules about using public property for private use. Meaning, if we can work with a business that needs some outdoor dining and they abut a town parking lot or a right-of-way, that as long as we can do it in a way that Geoff and Josh and Rob think are safe and doable, that we would work with them to be able to put agreements in place to cover our liability, and just kind of make it happen on a temporary basis. It does go outside our general rules, but I think if we could at least give the option, even if they don't do it. So that's the one thing. Dave will relish a good fight. That's the second thing. I'm getting kind of nervous about cash flow. I'm going to start making some moves to collapse, transfer assigned funds that are normally held in a separate bank account into our general fund for cash flow. We keep track of it on paper, like we always do. It just will be commingled in the general fund and held as a due to on the general ledger. The reason for this is we're still making $570,000 a month payment to the schools and $80,000 a week payroll, and we brought in $50,000 so far in the month of May. So just I don't think we're at a point where we need to think about a tax anticipation note, but I do want to just make you aware, because we're usually very careful about not commingling that money, so everything is very transparent. When you see the cash flow analysis, I think at the end of the month, you're probably going to see some commingling there, and I just want to make you aware of that. WPCF has been working through two fairly large problems. The first one, we've talked about it before, but we're seeing it at an incredible rate right now, and that's people who flush wipes. The wipes say they're disposable or flushable, and so they put them down the toilet, when they come to the pump station, it gums up the works. So we have a special pump that costs a pretty penny called the Eradicator. It's pretty cool, but it literally has knives in it, and it's still, those flushable wipes will wrap all around them and stop everything cold. We've put messaging out in the community, but anything that you guys can help with on your Facebook page, social media, discussions, anything you could do to help get people to understand that it's only the 3 Ps that go down the body. Just saying. Joe would appreciate that. It would stop some of our nighttime forays to WPCF to unclog the pump, which takes 2 people, just so you know. The second thing that they've been dealing with is pH. So we are, ideal pH in our effluent would be a 7, so neutral. And in our license, it can be between 9 and 6. So it can drop as low as 6 and still be fine. In the last 8 weeks, we've really been struggling with our pH. We are now at 4 violations. I think it's 4 or 5, where the pH had dropped to below 6. The WPCF crew, they've, we put bicarb in. Bicarb bags of, like big bags of bicarb get thrown in every day, 2 of those in the morning and 2 at night. That pulled the pH up to passing Monday through Friday, but by the time we came back in on, Tuesday through Friday, but by the time we came back in on Monday to pull another test, this system was dropping down into the 5s, and some of the readings were lower than Joe has ever seen in his entire career, which says quite a bit. So the crew has made its own pumping system that will now pump bicarb in over time. So it's kind of like it's dripping in. I think at last it's like 650 milliliters a minute, something along that line. And Monday, so they turn it on Friday afternoon and they turn it off on Monday morning. And then they just do the regular bicarb bags throughout the week because it's less costly because we're not paying for the electricity to run the pumps. I think his crew has found a solution here. The thing that concerned us was that we were noticing a considerable drop in pH was actually happening at the influent. So that's before it even came to us was quite a bit lower than it used to be. So we are now doing some investigation in the system to see if we can determine what that is. But it does mean if you go on the Department of Environmental Protection website and you looked up the town of Orono, you are going to see a few violations of the license because of those low pH readings. Just want to make you aware because we actually have people that go on the website and like to see how we're doing with our license. The last piece is around the state forecasting committee met, revenue forecasting committee met, and the report was released late yesterday afternoon. I had hoped to get to it today. My day was spent preparing for this meeting, talking to counselors and writing background for the meeting. So I have not yet been able to get to it. I did read the executive summary, and at this point, from the executive summary, it looks like they are projecting pretty significant revenue losses in the tune of about 48 to 50%. So I'm going to go back through. I don't want to throw numbers around at council, but it will likely mean me coming back with some revised revenue projections in the FY22 budget, FY21 budget. I wish we could just go to 22, but So that's what I have. That's all
I have just a quick question, since we're talking about money and fire spending freezes and stuff. Some community members had asked or floated the idea of using fireworks that we were going to use for other events for June for the seniors graduating, just so that folks, I mean, I guess council could do whatever it wants, but my sense is that, I mean, we don't have any money, so that would maybe be a bad thing to do, because I think maybe people think we just have a closet full of fireworks somewhere that are just not being used, maybe. But just to make things clear, first, Sophie, we do not have a closet full of fireworks. And
Nope.
no, right. And
No.
so a fireworks display means basically that we had allocated several $1,000s in the budget to purchase fireworks, or no?
So I don't know if it's a time of year issue or what, but when I went back to pull what we spent on Light Up the Night last year, so not this year because we didn't do it this year, but the previous year was $500. So I don't know, and that's why when I sent back to council, I said I'd have to see if our vendor was available, and if he was, what the cost would be, because I don't know if we just get a really good rate because we're doing it when nobody wants fireworks. You turned your video on, Dave, so I don't know if that means that you, oh, wait. Fireworks cost $3,500 usually.
There you
Is
go.
that-
See, I didn't
there you
even have
go.
to say it.
Okay, so at $3,500, that Dave and I had a conversation, and we think we could make a straight-faced argument that it would still be eligible for tax increment financing district funds, which is where it would normally come out of. The issue that we're running into is not at all even about the cost, because tax increment financing dollars can only be used for economic development purposes, and if we didn't use it, it would go back into the reserve. So that's not going to help me with my revenue deficit. But the issues we're running into are more logistic issues, and so the vendor was just one that we're going to have to look into. The second one was it is very dry. We have extremely high fire danger right now. We wouldn't issue a permit for fireworks right now. So if we won't issue it to the world, we really can't issue it to ourselves. And the last piece was more around the governor's executive orders. Right now, we're limiting people to 10. Gatherings can't be more than 10 people. On June 1st, that goes to gatherings can be 50 people, up to 50 people. So the question that we need to figure out is whether or not an outdoor fireworks display counts as a gathering for that, right? Based on what we're seeing out of Southern Maine and state action, I think the answer to that is yes. So how do you have a fireworks display that people don't gather? Well, then you have to have it without any publicity. And then is that really an effective use of tax dollars? So I think we're still trying to work through that. And part of me is hoping that the governor will give us a little bit more direction on outdoor activity versus indoor activity. But the idea of recognizing our graduating seniors who aren't really getting a whole lot of the pomp and circumstance that comes with graduation is not a bad thing. And if we can find a way to do it that makes sense, I think I would be absolutely supportive of bringing that to council. Where it's so far outside our norm, I really would want to bring that at least to workshop for discussion when we knew what the parameters were. And I would be more than happy to hear feedback from folks.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's, it's a good idea. The spirit behind it is great. Again, I think that maybe the community understanding of what we like, and no one said like, hey, you just have fireworks lying around, why don't you light them off? But, I mean, if you're not in the thick of things in municipal government, you might just think like, yeah, they bought some fireworks and then they didn't use them, so why not light them off? But if there are these logistical concerns, fire safety concerns, I mean, it might just be a good idea that just isn't right for right now. But I just wanted to make sure that because it was sort of, there was a little bit of swelling of support in the school community for that idea when it came up, that we gave it a little bit of airtime to figure out, you know, was it logistically possible? And perhaps it's not, but I didn't want to just kind of let it lie.
You know, I think right now staff is trying to kind of work through that, and unfortunately, it's just really hard to get answers out of the state, even when you're the town.
Okay, anything else from anybody?
So there was a question, Cindy, about why the low pH. Are there any hypotheses? The answer to that would be several. And if somebody wanted to send me an email or give me a call, I would be more than happy to, or Joe Madigan would be great to chat with at the plant. But yes, there are quite a few. So
Great. Anything else?
Just a reminder of when our next meeting is, next workshop.
Wednesday?
our next workshop is Wednesday, the 27th. We're going to do public services.
Thank you.
And when we do, so Wednesday and Thursday next week are devoted to public services. The Parks and Recreation is going to be a big piece of that, and I'm actually going to need folks to give us some feedback sooner rather than later on some of our ideas for moving forward given COVID-19.
Okay.
Sounds great. All right, with that, I will say goodbye to everyone. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we'll catch you on Wednesday.